none of us are professional. So please, understand, be kind. If you've heard any of these jokes or stories, remember that possibly your neighbors, people who are sitting next to you or near you, may not have heard these stories. So let's just make sure that we cooperate and be kind to us people who are trying. These three lawyers who met in Washington, D.C. As you know, the former Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia had passed away, and they were having this memorial funeral for him. And they had the casket there, and the first lawyer said, gee, he said, when they look at me in that casket, I would like people to say that there was a man who was a really wonderful lawyer, helped everybody that he could, fought for justice, was a great man. And the second fellow said, well, he said, when people look at me there, lying there, I'd like them to say, there was a man who really contributed to his community, who helped everyone that needed help, made all sorts of contributions, and was a great man and a wonderful asset for the community. What about you, Joe, the third fellow? He said, well, when they look at me lying there, I'd like them to say, look, he moved. Anyway, I want to tell you the story about spaghetti. It's a very interesting story. There's a very, very wealthy man in New York. Happened to be very wealthy, and one day he saw this very, very pretty young Italian girl. And of course he started to romance her, and sure enough, a little while later she came and told him that she was pregnant. And he said, you know, he said, I have a wonderful wife, I'm happily married, I have a great family, I have a lot of friends and a wonderful big business, and what I can do for you, I can set you up. He said, if you go back to Italy, have your child there, I'll pay all the expenses, there's no problem with that. And then, when the child is born, you simply write on the back of a postcard, spaghetti, and send it to my office, and I will instruct my attorney to set up a wonderful fund that'll keep you and your child living in luxury for the rest of your lives. There'll be no problem with that. So the young lady reluctantly agreed, went back to Italy, and sure enough, about 9 months later, this postcard comes, lands, his secretary brings it in, drops it in his box. He happens to be there with a friend. He picks up the card, looks at it, and says, oh my God, pops down in his chair. His friend doesn't know what happened. Picked up the postcard, looks at it, can't figure it out. It says, spaghetti, 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 spaghetti. 3 with meatballs, 2 without. Now, this young lady, no, I'm going to tell you first about this young man. This young man goes into a pharmacy, and he goes up to the pharmacy window, and he says, there's a woman pharmacist, and he says, ma'am, do you have a male pharmacist around here? Because I have something I really would like to talk about, but I have a problem and really would feel more comfortable speaking with a male. And she says, well, actually, it's just my sister and I are the only ones. We don't even have a male working in the store. We're just the 2 of us here. He says, well, he says, I have a problem. She said, but don't worry, I'm a pharmacist, I'm professional, I've been doing this for many years, I know all the information that there is, and I know that if we can help, I know that we certainly will be able to help. So he says, well, my problem is you've heard, you've seen the commercials and heard the commercials of Viagra. Well, he says, my problem is, unfortunately, I have an erection that lasts me for 4 hours every day. What can you give me for it? She says, well, you just wait here, and I'll go talk to my sister. She leaves and comes back a few minutes later, says, well, the best we can do is 10% of the business, $1,000 a month, and in the back room, a separate bed and a private room. That was what her answer was. I guess it wasn't that funny. Anyway, this woman goes into a pharmacy, a different pharmacy, and she walks up to this pharmacist at the window, says, I want to buy some cyanide. And the pharmacist says, cyanide? What are you going to use? Do that, what's cyanide for? Well, she said, I'm going to poison my husband. He said, oh, no, ladies. I can't do that. I can't sell you any of that stuff. That stuff is deadly. So she reaches into her purse, pulls out a photograph, pushes it across the counter, and says, you look at that picture. There is a picture of my husband and your wife in bed together. And he pauses and he says, I didn't know you had a prescription. Okay. Now we're going to introduce our first presenter. And here's a young lady who's a volunteer, and her name happens to be Susan Reagan. She's going to tell you some interesting stories.
Thank you very much. My stories are not quite as sexy. Anyway, I was talking to my daughter who lives in Texas, and she was telling me about this event that happened in a bar in Waco. Okay, these people, these cowboys, are sitting at the bar, sitting drinking. One of the guys walks out of the bar, and within seconds he's back in. And he stands and he looks around and he pulls his gun out and he said, which of you mangy polecats painted my horse red? There was silence. He looked around again, he said, I'm asking you, tell me, which of you mangy critters painted my horse red? There was silence again. And then from the bar, a 7-foot cowboy stands up. He pulls out his cannon and he said, I done it. I painted your horse red. And the first guy said, I just wanted to tell you the first coat is dry. Now there are some funny stories too about Naples, and this happened in a snazzy downtown hotel. This French couple were staying at this hotel downtown, and they had room service for breakfast. It was lovely. But shortly after that, the Frenchman picked up the phone and called the front gate, and front desk. Okay, and he said, bonjour. And they said, oh, hello. And they said, bonjour. He said, I need some pepper. And so they said, pepper? Oh, okay, you just had breakfast. Okay, do you want black pepper or red pepper. And he says, listen, I mean toilet pepper. When I was a little girl, I had blonde hair. They called me a towhead blonde, real blonde hair. And now they have these lovely stories about blonde girls. Well, this happened, okay? This blonde, a brunette, and a redhead were in the county jail. They escaped. This might have been in Texas too. Anyway, they got out and they started running and they found this farmhouse and they went into the barn and lying on the floor with these bags, empty bags, you know, whatever. So they said, why don't each of us hide in one of these bags because I think that the police are coming. Okay. So the brunette was in the bag, and when the police officer come in, he kicks her. And he says, and it says, woof, woof. And he said, oh, just some dogs, puppies in this bag. Goes over to the next bag with a brunette, kicks that, and it says, meow, meow. And then he goes over to the last bag where the blonde is and kicks that. And she said, what did she say? She said, potatoes, potatoes. I gotta tell you about this, I've got a nice neighborhood. And the other day I saw this woman, she kept going out to the mailbox. She kept going back and forth out to the mailbox. And her neighbor said, are you waiting for a special delivery or FedEx or something? She said, no, I was just sitting on my computer and it keeps telling me I have mail. But I will tell you the last story or the piece of information. Do you know why men like BMWs? Because they can spell it.
Thank you so much, Susan. Well, that's wonderful. I wanted to just pick up a little bit and mention that this woman was at the bedside in a hospital with this man there, and he was obviously in a very bad way. And the nurse was there, and the nurse was watching and helping, and the man said, I want to gather all the kids around me, you know, my children. So the two boys and a girl came, and they were there with the wife, and the nurse was standing there, and he said, now, he said, when I die, Jimmy, he said, Jimmy, when I die, I want you take over the houses on the waterfront. And Jackie, when I die, you take the condos and the high-rise. And Mary, when I pass away, you take those houses that are over by the bay. And Susan, to my dear wife, maybe you can have the big area by the waterfront there too. And the nurse goes over and she says, oh, ma'am, I didn't know your husband was so wealthy and had so much real estate. And she said, real estate? That fool has a newspaper route. Now, we happened to be in Ireland, and they had this old story about this very old woman there in Ireland who was about to die, and she had called, and she lived in this very small town, she called in important townspeople there and told them, on my tombstone, I want to make sure that it's inscribed that I was born as a virgin. I lived my entire life here in town as a virgin, and I died as a pure virgin. And they said, of course, Maggie, of course. And sure enough, a few days later, Maggie passed away. And it just so happened that this was a very small town, and the fellow